Some stories disappear, some are erased, and some are waiting to be uncovered. The Dark Bureau.
A container ship glides into a major European port as the sun rises, its decks layered with steel boxes from half a world away. Towering cranes clutch containers from hulls in a silent routine refined by centuries of commerce. Below, dock workers in high-visibility vests guide cargo from ship to shore while radios crackle with scheduling updates. A symphony performed thousands of times each day. To any observer, it is the choreography of legitimate business, goods arriving to power industries and stock store shelves. But hidden beneath every manifest and barcode, an illicit parallel world thrives undetected. In these anonymous containers pass not just fabrics, machinery and fruit, but cocaine, counterfeit electronics, and sometimes people. Hidden in plain sight, gliding through a system built for global trust. We take comfort in the belief that ports are fortresses, hubs of scrutiny, bastions of law, the front lines of national security. Security cameras sweep the corridors, customs inspectors monitor screens, and biometric gates monitor every badge. The narrative promises the exclusion of danger at the border. But if you pull back far enough, the truth emerges. Rather than bottlenecks for the world's criminal ambitions, these ports have become the very enablers of those ambitions. Syndicates and cartels have turned ports into operational launch pads, embedding themselves within the architecture of trade. Behind the curtain of commerce, supply chains are being repurposed and subverted, with legitimate transactions glossing over a new, deeply embedded system of organised crime. This is no longer a question of individual smugglers or a handful of corrupt officials. It's a structural capture of the arteries of global trade, a phenomenon known to investigators as port capture. Follow a single container journeying from a Colombian export terminal to the bustling ports of Rotterdam or Antwerp. The transit looks mundane, unloaded from a ship by robotic cranes, routed through customs, logged on digital tracking systems, and dispatched by truck into the heart of Europe. Yet repeated thousands of times, a disturbing pattern forms. Law enforcement analysts sift through manifest data and shipping routes and recognize the fingerprints of a hidden order. Traffickers have perfected a model for embedding within the supply chain, using layers of anonymity, complex paperwork, and digital manipulation to all but erase the border between legal and illegal. What appears as routine commerce is, in reality, a conveyor for criminal enterprise where ports are not merely breached. They have become the foundations for an entire parallel market. Consider the scale. Each week, millions of containers traverse ports like Rotterdam, Antwerp, and Dubai. In 2022, European officials intercepted over 300 tons of cocaine, but that represents only a fraction. By most estimates, at least 10 times that amount flowed through undetected. Criminal alliances from Colombia's drug clans, Italy's mafia syndicates, Balkan smuggling rings, and Middle Eastern networks have built sprawling webs of influence. Their strategies pivot not just on reckless risk-taking, but on careful organisation, infiltration of port jobs, cultivation of insiders, strategic bribery, and quiet intimidation. The port workforce, once the first line of defence, transforms into a key vulnerability. Control over shipping schedules, vehicle movements, access codes, and even insurance claims can be bought or coerced. The entire infrastructure of legitimate trade acts as camouflage age, offering countless opportunities to mask illicit shipments within seas of sanctioned cargo. This transformation is no accident. Ports, by their very nature, are designed to accelerate trade. Rapid movement of containers, labyrinthine paperwork, and overlapping bureaucracies produce precisely the opacity and complexity where criminal operations thrive. Each phase in the shipping process, booking, routing, customs clearance, inspection, dispatch, offers a potential entry point. A single hacked password, a forged RFID badge, or a paid-off supervisor can relay hundreds of millions worth of narcotics or contraband. Paper trails are muddied by the multinational patchwork of companies, each with different documentation processes and languages. A shipment originating in Latin America might pass through a dozen hands before delivery. Plenty of shadows for criminal networks to hide in. Corruption is the cornerstone. Organised crime begins by targeting underpaid and overlooked staff. The dock worker who checks seals in the early morning fog. The night guard who controls the camera feeds. Some staff are paid off directly, each tip-off or turned blind eye rewarded with cash slipped under a truck seat, or through offshore wire transfers disguised as consulting fees. Others are manipulated through blackmail or threats against family. In time, this recruitment campaign moves up the professional food chain, affecting logistics planners, customs brokers, security contractors, and sometimes even mid-level managers. These actors gain the ability to manipulate workflows, assign trusted team members to key shifts, and reroute suspicious containers to less scrutinised zones. The port's greatest strength, its intricate and efficient systems, becomes its greatest vulnerability as insiders work together to reroute cargo and erase digital footprints. The logistics network, once a robust chain, is now riddled with subversive redundancies. Criminal syndicates install backup plans for every phase of the operation. Surveillance cameras are disabled in carefully timed intervals, sometimes for only a few minutes, but long enough to reroute containers or swap seals. Access logs and digital records are edited or deleted by insiders versed in cybersecurity. A single corrupt warehouse supervisor may assign units of cargo to friendly handlers who ensure shipment integrity for the right clients. Meanwhile, when an operation is compromised, if authorities intercept a container or a whistleblower comes forward, criminals pivot in hours, changing SIM cards, burning phones, and shifting operations to alternative routes or ports. Law enforcement is left reacting to shadows, uncertain of where or when the next breach will occur. Even successful investigations often dismantle only a fraction of the corrupted network, as syndicates sacrifice expendable assets and rotate in new collaborators. Structural capture of the port is not about a single rogue shipment, it is about persistence, resilience, and scale. Once a safe corridor is established, criminal groups bring in a steady convoy of contraband. Colombian trafficking bosses have been documented setting up legitimate businesses and legal offices near European terminals, blending into the industrial landscape. Balkan networks use smaller, under-monitored Mediterranean ports as alternate entry points, smuggling not just drugs, but stolen electronics, weapons, and at times, desperate migrants. Labour unions representing port workers already struggling with precarious bargaining power become battlegrounds for criminal infiltration. The corruption seeps upward, infecting layers of management, insurance underwriters, data entry clerks, and other overlooked actors in the chain. The line between above-board trade and illicit activity blurs so completely that the flow of goods serves both masters at once. In institutional and structural terms, the port's control shifts, often without the public's knowledge, until entire sections answer to criminal governance as much as the legitimate one. Investigators describing today's port environments speak of an asymmetric struggle. Port complexes are massive ecosystems straddling national and municipal jurisdictions, with private security working alongside, and sometimes at odds with, public police and customs agents. Layers of bureaucracy create confusion. Shipping agents, dock operators, terminal authorities, and customs divisions each hold fragments of oversight, but rarely see the full picture. European enforcement agencies sometimes bring in military intelligence teams to probe the networks, an explicit recognition that local authorities cannot cope alone. When one criminal cell is purged, it often reconstitutes under a new banner, preserving the deep, systemic vulnerability. Law enforcement must contend with lost tax revenues, billions flowing into shadow economies, and the slow but relentless erosion of public faith in institutions meant to safeguard the border. Every misrouted container signals a fracture in state legitimacy, deepening mistrust among citizens and global trading partners. A landmark in this ongoing battle came in early 2023, when Dutch and Belgian authorities exposed how large international shipping lines, ostensibly neutral actors, were being systematically exploited. Investigations traced insider access back at least 2 years. Customs IT platforms originally designed for security had been infiltrated and manipulated. Advanced software tampered with inspection scheduling, sending customs inspectors to random containers already cleaned of evidence, steering them away from the real contraband containers. Human, technical, and digital vulnerabilities aligned to create a near-invisible fast lane for criminal goods. Technical audits confirmed that not just hardware and surveillance software, but the very operating logic of port control had been repurposed to facilitate crime. For the underworld, it was industrial-scale innovation, the achievement not just of physical infiltration, but of deep system capture. The fallout radiates far beyond the criminal and law enforcement actors. The institutional response has ranged from mass staff rotations and advanced background screening to the adoption of artificial intelligence for pattern detection. New regulations require biometric access controls, high-resolution cargo scanners, and mandatory audits for contractor firms. Yet for every security layer, criminal consultants construct new workarounds, offering their services on encrypted apps bought by organised crime with money funneled through countless shell firms offshore. Insurance premiums rise, reflecting the heightened risks and liabilities. Legitimate shipping companies wrestle with higher costs and delays, often unable to compete with rivals willing to cut corners or pay protection. Whistleblowers, meanwhile, find themselves isolated and afraid, fearing retaliation not just from dismissed colleagues, but from criminal contacts with reach and memory. Consequences stretch into everyday life. Importers watch costs spiral, insurance companies ration policies, and entire supply chains slow under surges in security checks. In some port cities, dock districts become no-go zones, neighbourhoods policed less by law enforcement than by criminal syndicates, whose control is signalled with coded graffiti or rumours passed in seafarers' bars. The boundary between legitimate and illicit trade is not just blurred, but actively contested on the ground. Residents and workers alike face heightened danger, and police hesitate to confront the entrenched power of criminal groups controlling warehouses and shipping compounds. Journalists reporting from these zones record stories of nighttime intimidation, silent payoffs, and systemic impunity. The broader economic and political implications are stark. Governments face international scrutiny as illicit flows undermine revenue and trade credibility. Trading partners demand heightened assurances, while local communities find their trust eroded. Public institutions respond with ever more sophisticated measures: real-time data sharing, algorithmic risk scoring, and multinational sting operations. Yet vigilance brings its own casualties. Civil rights advocates raise alarms as privacy is pushed aside for surveillance, and businesses grind against mounting paperwork and suspicion. Port police face a revolving door of suspects, rarely able to prosecute the most powerful figures. The world's trading system remains under siege, vulnerable not only to criminal innovation, but to its own structural inertia. Each time you glimpse a skyline crowded with dockside cranes or drive past endless stacks of multicoloured containers, remember what remains unseen. Every door designed to enable prosperity is also a potential breach for criminal empire. With each passing year, the gulf between commerce and crime narrows, leaving cities and institutions wrestling with the consequences. In a world where trade relies upon unseen trust, the real cost of port capture is measured not only in narcotics seized, but in confidence lost, and borders blurred. The next moment of routine, another container lowering onto a trailer, is never quite what it seems.